Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. This story is shaking up politics across North America, and people everywhere are taking sides. Is Trump protecting America, or is Canada right to push back? Stay tuned, because this story gets bigger and more intense with every minute. Tonight, a political firestorm is exploding across North America, and it could change the future of the United States, Canada, and China forever. President Donald Trump is reportedly furious after Canada moved closer to China in a series of trade talks that many people in Washington never saw coming. Behind closed doors, sources say Trump warned Canada that massive tariffs could hit if the country keeps building stronger economic ties with Beijing. And now, the internet is on fire. Canadians are angry. Trump supporters are cheering. Security experts are warning that North America may be heading toward a dangerous economic split, unlike anything seen in decades. This is not just another trade fight. This is about power. This is about control. And this is about who will dominate the future economy of the world. According to reports coming from both American and Canadian political circles, Canada has already negotiated tariff reductions with China and expanded major economic discussions under Prime Minister Mark Carney. Those talks reportedly include energy cooperation, manufacturing partnerships, and supply chain agreements. That alone was enough to trigger panic in Washington. Why? Because many American conservatives believe China could use Canada as a backdoor into U.S. markets. If Chinese goods move through Canada under new trade arrangements, critics fear American industries could face serious pressure, and President Trump is making it clear he does not like what he sees. Sources close to the White House claim Trump warned Canadian officials that America could strike back hard with huge tariffs on Canadian products if the relationship with China continues to grow. That warning immediately sent shockwaves through political circles. Suddenly, this became bigger than trade. Now people are asking a terrifying question. Is North America starting to break apart economically? For years, the United States and Canada worked closely together as allies. Their economies became deeply connected. Millions of jobs depend on that relationship. But now, tensions are rising fast. Many Canadians are saying Trump is crossing a line. On social media, angry users accused the U.S. president of trying to control Canadian sovereignty. Some called the threats economic bullying. Others warned Canada should never allow Washington to dictate who it can trade with, and those comments spread like wildfire online. At the same time, Trump supporters argue the president is protecting American workers from China's growing global influence. The divide is becoming deeper by the hour. And tonight, the entire world is watching. What makes this situation even more explosive is the timing. The United States is already locked in fierce economic competition with China. Tensions over technology, manufacturing, military power, and global influence have been growing for years. Now Canada is suddenly standing right in the middle of that battle. That is why this story is becoming one of the biggest political flashpoints online. Experts say Trump's anger is not only about trade numbers, it is about fear that China is slowly building influence inside North America itself. And that possibility has alarmed many people inside Washington. For decades, America tried to limit China's economic power. Both Republican and Democratic leaders warned about relying too heavily on Chinese manufacturing and supply chains. But Canada's recent moves appear to signal something different. Instead of pulling away from China, Ottawa seems willing to open more economic doors. That changes everything. Political analysts say Trump sees this as a direct challenge to America's strategy against Beijing. And if Trump follows through on tariff threats, the consequences could be massive. Prices could rise, businesses could suffer, jobs could be affected on both sides of the border, and ordinary people may end up paying the price. But here is where things become even more dramatic. Many Canadians are refusing to back down. Some leaders in Canada argue their country has every right to build relationships with any nation it chooses. They say Canada cannot allow its economy to depend only on the United States forever. That argument is gaining support, especially after years of trade disputes with Washington. People still remember earlier battles over steel, aluminum, dairy products, and energy pipelines. Those fights damaged trust between the two countries. Now, critics say Trump's latest warning is reopening old wounds, and online emotions are exploding. One viral comment said, "Canada should never ask permission from America to grow its economy." Another warned Trump is pushing allies away instead of bringing them closer. Meanwhile, Trump supporters responded with fierce anger of their own. Many said China is America's biggest economic threat and accused Canada of helping Beijing gain more power. Some even called for immediate tariffs right now. The pressure is building quickly, and behind all the political fighting is one massive reality nobody can ignore. China is becoming impossible to avoid in the global economy. Even countries closely tied to America are struggling to balance business opportunities with security concerns. That balancing act may now be reaching a breaking point. Security experts are now sounding alarms about something far bigger than tariffs. They fear North America could slowly split into competing economic blocs. That warning has shocked many observers because it suggests the relationship between America and Canada may be entering dangerous territory. For generations, the two countries were viewed as inseparable partners. They shared trade, they shared military cooperation, they shared intelligence, and they often stood together against global threats. But now cracks are beginning to show. Experts say if Canada deepens ties with China while America moves aggressively against Beijing, both countries could end up following very different economic paths. That could create serious tension across the continent, and some analysts believe the damage may already be starting. One concern focuses on supply chains. If Chinese companies increase investments in Canadian industries, American officials may fear sensitive technology or strategic materials could eventually move closer to Chinese influence. That is a nightmare scenario for national security hawks in Washington, especially during a time when competition between America and China is becoming more intense by the day. But Canadian leaders see the situation differently. Many argue Canada must protect its own future. They say relying too heavily on the United States creates risks for Canada's economy. If American politics suddenly changes, Canada could face major financial pain overnight. That fear grew stronger after years of unpredictable trade battles. Now many Canadians want more options, and China represents a huge market. That is why economic talks between Ottawa and Beijing are receiving so much attention. Some experts believe Canada is trying to build leverage. Others believe it is simply trying to survive in a rapidly changing world economy. But no matter the reason, Trump appears determined to stop it. Reports suggest White House insiders are already discussing aggressive responses if trade cooperation between Canada and China expands further. That possibility is terrifying businesses on both sides of the border. Manufacturers worry supply chains could collapse under new tariffs. Farmers fear export markets could disappear. Investors are becoming nervous, and ordinary citizens are wondering if another major trade war is about to begin. Meanwhile, China is watching carefully. Beijing understands that any division between America and Canada could create new opportunities. And that is exactly what worries U.S. officials the most, because this is no longer just about economics. This is about global influence. This is about strategic power. And this is about who controls the future. The political reactions have become absolutely explosive. Inside the United States, conservative voices are rallying behind President Trump's hard stance. Many believe Canada is making a dangerous mistake by opening the door wider to China. They argue Beijing has spent years trying to expand its influence around the world through trade deals, infrastructure projects, and investments. And now they fear North America could become the next battlefield. Some Republican commentators are calling Canada's actions reckless. Others warn that America cannot allow Chinese companies indirect access to U.S. consumers through Canadian trade routes. That fear is spreading fast across conservative media. At the same time, many Canadian voices are pushing back with fury. Political commentators in Canada say Trump is acting like he has authority over another sovereign nation. That word sovereignty is becoming central to this entire fight. Canadians across the political spectrum are asking one question over and over again. Who decides Canada's future? Ottawa or Washington? That debate is now exploding online. Some users accuse Trump of trying to intimidate Canada into obedience. Others warn that America's pressure tactics could permanently damage the relationship between the two allies. And there is another major issue, making this situation even more dangerous. Trust between the United States and Canada has been under strain for years. Trade disputes, political disagreements, and growing nationalism on both sides of the border created tension long before this latest crisis. Now, many fear this conflict could push the relationship into a new and unpredictable phase. Business leaders are especially nervous. Large companies depend heavily on stable trade between America and Canada. Billions of dollars move across the border every single day. If tariffs suddenly hit, the consequences could spread very quickly. Factories could slow down, prices could increase, jobs could disappear, and financial markets could react sharply. That is why this story is causing such massive attention worldwide. People understand this is not just another political argument. This could affect millions of lives, and while politicians fight publicly, behind closed doors, diplomats are reportedly scrambling to calm the situation before it spirals further out of control. But tonight, the anger is still growing, and President Trump appears unwilling to soften his message. Tonight, many people are asking the same frightening question. How far could this conflict actually go? Because once tariff wars begin, they often grow much larger than anyone expects. History has shown that economic fights between major nations can quickly spiral into political crises. And right now, the tension between America, Canada, and China is creating a situation filled with uncertainty. Some experts fear this could become the start of a completely new economic map for North America. One side centered around America, another side increasingly connected to China, and Canada trapped directly in the middle. That possibility would have sounded impossible years ago, but today, people are taking it seriously. Behind the scenes, global investors are watching every statement closely. Companies are already trying to predict what happens if Trump moves forward with harsh tariffs against Canadian goods. The stakes are enormous. Canada sends huge amounts of products into the United States every year, including energy, vehicles, food, and industrial materials. Any disruption could send shockwaves through the economy, and yet, despite the risks, neither side appears ready to back down. Trump continues presenting himself as a defender of American workers and American industries. His supporters believe he is standing strong against China's global ambitions. Meanwhile, many Canadians see the situation completely differently. They believe Canada has the right to protect its own economy and expand trade wherever opportunities exist. That growing divide is becoming emotional. Patriotic feelings are rising on both sides of the border, and social media is making everything even more intense. Every statement spreads instantly. Every rumor creates panic. Every political comment turns into another online battle. What started as trade negotiations is now turning into something much larger, a struggle over independence, a struggle over power, and a struggle over the future direction of North America itself. But perhaps the biggest question of all remains unanswered tonight. What does China gain from all of this? Because while America and Canada argue publicly, Beijing may be quietly watching two longtime allies drift further apart. And if that happens, the balance of global power could begin changing in ways nobody expected. This story is moving fast. The pressure is rising. As this crisis grows bigger, world leaders are beginning to pay attention in a very serious way, because this fight is no longer staying between Washington and Ottawa. Now the entire global economy could feel the impact. European leaders are reportedly watching closely, worried that tensions inside North America may weaken Western unity at a time when global competition is becoming more dangerous. And China is staying unusually calm in public. That silence is making some experts even more nervous. Beijing understands something very important. The stronger the division between America and Canada becomes, the more opportunities China may gain, economically and politically. That is why many analysts believe China does not need to attack anyone directly. It simply needs America and its allies to turn against each other. And tonight, critics fear that may already be happening. Meanwhile, inside Canada, pressure is rising on Prime Minister Mark Carney. Some business leaders support stronger trade ties with China because they believe Canada needs larger markets beyond the United States. Others are warning Carney to slow down before relations with Washington become seriously damaged. The political balancing act is becoming nearly impossible. Move closer to China, and Canada risks angering its largest ally and trading partner. Move away from China, and Canada could lose huge economic opportunities. Either decision comes with major consequences, and President Trump appears determined to force a choice. That is the heart of this entire conflict. Trump does not want America's closest neighbor building deeper economic dependence on Beijing, especially during a time when the White House is pushing aggressive policies against Chinese influence worldwide. Some insiders say Trump sees this moment as a test of loyalty, a test that could define America's future relationships with allies around the world. Because if Canada moves forward, despite Trump's warnings, other countries may believe they can do the same. That possibility deeply worries many people inside the administration. And now, financial experts are beginning to ask another frightening question. Could this fight eventually hurt the U.S. economy too? Because trade wars rarely damage only one side. If tariffs hit Canadian goods, American businesses and consumers may also face higher costs. Supply chains between the two countries are deeply connected. Cars, energy, food, technology, construction materials. Millions of products cross the border constantly. A serious economic conflict could send prices soaring in ways ordinary families would feel very quickly. That is why investors are becoming increasingly nervous tonight, because nobody knows where this ends. What may surprise many people is how emotional this story has become. This is no longer just politicians arguing over trade policy. Now national pride is involved. Across Canada, more citizens are openly questioning whether their country depends too much on the United States. That conversation is becoming louder every day. Some Canadians say Trump's threats prove Canada must become more economically independent. Others fear their country is being pushed into a dangerous position between two superpowers. And on American television, the reaction is just as intense. Many Trump supporters believe Canada should stand fully with the United States against China without hesitation. To them, this is about protecting North America from Beijing's growing power. But critics argue the White House is using fear to pressure allies. That disagreement is creating huge divisions online. Every speech becomes a viral clip. Every interview sparks outrage. Every new rumor spreads across social media within minutes. And behind all the noise is one terrifying reality. Neither side seems ready to compromise. Trump has built much of his political identity around fighting unfair trade and confronting China aggressively. Backing down now could look weak to his supporters. At the same time, Canadian leaders know surrendering under American pressure could create political backlash at home. So both sides are digging in deeper. And that raises fears this conflict could continue, escalating for months. Some experts warn the economic consequences may only be the beginning. They fear political trust between the United States and Canada could suffer long-term damage if the situation keeps worsening. That would be historic, because for decades, the U.S.-Canada alliance was considered one of the strongest relationships in the world. Now suddenly people are asking whether that era is beginning to crack. And there is another issue making everything more dangerous: military and security cooperation. The United States and Canada work closely together on intelligence, border security, and defense systems. If political tensions continue rising, some analysts worry those partnerships could become more strained over time. That possibility was almost unthinkable not long ago, but today experts are openly discussing it. That shows how serious this crisis has become. And tonight, ordinary people on both sides of the border are watching nervously, wondering what tomorrow's headlines may bring. Inside Washington tonight, political insiders say President Trump is more determined than ever to confront China's growing influence. And that determination may shape every decision moving forward. According to reports, administration officials believe China is trying to expand its global reach through strategic economic partnerships all around the world. Africa, South America, Europe, Asia, and now possibly deeper into North America itself. That is why Trump reportedly reacted so strongly to Canada's negotiations with Beijing to the White House. This is not just business. It is strategy, it is influence, it is power. And officials close to the administration reportedly fear that once Chinese economic influence grows inside neighboring countries, it becomes much harder to contain later. That fear explains why Trump's warning sounded so aggressive. But the reaction from Canada may have surprised Washington. Instead of immediately backing away, many Canadian voices became even more defiant. Some political commentators accused America of acting like Canada belongs under U.S. control. Others argued that modern alliances should be based on partnership, not threats. Those comments are resonating with many frustrated Canadians tonight, especially younger voters who believe Canada should have more freedom to shape its own economic future. At the same time, many American voters are strongly backing Trump's position. Polls and online reactions show large numbers of conservatives believe the president is doing exactly what he promised, protecting American industries, protecting national security, and standing up to China. That support is giving Trump political momentum during this fight, but some economists are urging caution. They warn emotional politics could push both countries into decisions that hurt workers, businesses, and consumers for years. Trade wars often begin with tough speeches, but eventually, real people feel the consequences. Factories slow down, investments freeze, the prices rise, jobs disappear, and repairing damaged relationships can take decades. That warning is now echoing across financial markets tonight. Still, despite all the risks, the political temperature continues rising, and many observers believe the next few weeks could determine whether this situation cools down or explodes into a full economic confrontation. Tonight, one major question is hanging over this entire crisis. What happens if Canada refuses to change course? That possibility is becoming very real. So far, Canadian officials have shown little sign of abandoning talks with China completely. And that means President Trump may soon face a critical decision. Does he follow through on tariff threats, or does he step back before tensions spiral further? Either path carries huge risks. If Trump imposes harsh tariffs, relations between the two countries could enter one of the most hostile periods in modern history. But if he backs down, critics may accuse him of weakening America's position against China. That political pressure is enormous, especially because Trump built his presidency around strong nationalist policies and aggressive trade negotiations. Many supporters expect him to act forcefully. And tonight, rumors are spreading that White House advisors are already preparing possible economic countermeasures behind the scenes. Those reports are fueling even more anxiety in financial circles. Markets hate uncertainty, and right now uncertainty is everywhere. Businesses do not know what rules may suddenly change. Investors do not know which industries could face tariffs next. Workers do not know whether their jobs could eventually be affected. That fear is spreading quickly. Meanwhile, China may be gaining exactly what it wants. Every moment of tension between America and Canada creates new opportunities for Beijing to present itself as a stable economic partner. That possibility is deeply alarming many U.S. strategists tonight, because they believe America's greatest strength has always been its alliances. And if those alliances weaken, global power could slowly begin shifting. That is why this story matters far beyond politics. This is about the future balance of power in the world, who controls trade, who controls influence, and who shapes the next generation of global economics. For now, all eyes remain fixed on Trump, Carney, and Beijing, waiting, watching, trying to predict who will make the next move. But But one thing is already clear tonight. This conflict has become much larger than anyone expected, and millions of people are now emotionally invested in what happens next. Tonight, North America stands at a crossroads. What began as trade negotiations has now become one of the most explosive political confrontations in recent memory. President Trump's fury over Canada's growing relationship with China has triggered fear, anger, patriotism, and uncertainty across the continents. And nobody truly knows how this ends. Some believe Trump is defending America from dangerous foreign influence. Others believe Canada is simply protecting its independence and economic future. Both sides believe they are right. And that is what makes this situation so dangerous. Because when national pride and economic power collide, compromise becomes much harder. Right now, the pressure is building everywhere. Inside governments, inside financial markets, inside businesses, and inside ordinary homes where families worry about prices, jobs, and the future. Meanwhile, China continues watching carefully from the background. Every disagreement between America and Canada creates new possibilities for Beijing's global strategy. That reality has many security experts deeply concerned tonight. They fear the Western alliance may slowly weaken, while China quietly expands its reach. And if that happens, the consequences could reshape world politics for years to come. Still, there is one final truth many people cannot ignore. The relationship between the United States and Canada is too important to collapse easily. The two nations share history, trade, security, culture, and millions of personal connections across the border. That bond remains powerful, but tonight it is clearly under strain, and the decisions made in the coming weeks may determine whether this crisis becomes a temporary political storm or the beginning of a completely new chapter in North American history. One thing is certain, the world is watching closely. President Trump is not backing down. Canada is standing firm. China is waiting patiently, and this story is far from over. If you enjoyed this breaking report, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Is Trump right to confront Canada over China? Or should Canada be free to choose its own path without pressure from Washington? Stay tuned, because the next developments in this story could change everything overnight.